Ah, my old nemesis, Velma. You have deigned to show your face once again, and once again I feel like I have to banish you from whence you came. Back when I was still trying to figure out what to do with this channel, I did a couple of reactions to Season 1, and let's just say it melted my brain. I'm probably gonna kill myself tonight. This time I'm going to try to attempt a proper criticism of this decrepit pit stain of a show's second season, and this time it's personal. Scooby-Doo is one of the first franchises I've ever fallen in love with. I still remember going to the gym with my dad just to watch reruns of Where Are You on the Boomerang channel, because what else are you gonna do at a gym as a kid? And then I'd go home to rewatch episodes of What's New. Those meddling kids and their talking dogs shaped a lot of my childhood, defining my fascination with the supernatural, my love of the mystery genre, my weirdly broad taste in music, maybe a little bit of my taste in women, and I suppose it helped get the ball rolling on my love of film. Where Are You will always be a favorite of mine, while Mystery Inc. still holds a spot as one of my favorite shows ever made. I owe this franchise a lot, and that's why I must defend its honor against this affront to decency. Like all franchises, Scooby-Doo has had its ups and downs, but I would argue every iteration has some redeeming factor, even the one that people think is a Family Guy clone. However, Velma has no such redeeming factors outside of some admittedly solid animation. There are very few things I've become so viscerally angry watching as Velma Season 1, and for the sake of my love of Scooby-Doo and for your entertainment, I'm going to dive into Velma Season 2, even if it drives me insane. But first, for those of you who have forgotten, or for the more sane of you who didn't watch it at all, we have to do a brief recap of Velma Season 1, according to my vague recollections, because I refuse to rewatch it.
Previously on Velma. Our titular crime fighter is now a race-swapped self-insert who is a belligerent asshole to everyone. Daphne is an Asian lesbian, Shaggy isn't Shaggy, and Fred is a whiny mama's boy with a tiny penis. Speaking of which, Fred's mom is a serial killer stealing the brains of hot teenage girls. The show's words, not mine, to somehow make her son smarter. She used the lab that belonged to Not Shaggy's dead grandma and kidnapped Velma's mom to operate everything. Not Shaggy kills her while Velma twerks on her corpse. Velma and Daphne kiss, but Velma accidentally calls her Not Shaggy. Joke about white people, joke about hot girls. Weirdly specific pop culture references to a thing that doesn't actually exist.
Alright, I think that's all that needs to be covered. I hope. On to Season 2! Yay! Season 2 picks up 3 weeks after the events of the previous season, with Velma getting jump-scared by Daphne in the woods.
Don't kill me! I'm about to attend a super cool party and I'm not even crashing!
Some S-tier voice acting we're working with here, folks. They're both on their way to a party in the middle of the woods. Velma is popular now since she solved the big hot girl killer mystery, so she gets access to these parties all the time. However, as Daphne and Velma argue about the status of their relationship, something we all definitely care about, they discover the half-buried body of the sheriff who was killed at the very end of Season 1. Velma immediately suspects Fred's dead mom because...
In horror movies, killers always return 3 to 10 times.
That's the master mystery solver of this town? Ah yes, I remember a couple years ago when my hometown of Little Rock had a serial stabber on the loose and the police needed guidance to find the culprit, and I called them up and was like, have y'all ever considered Jeffrey Dahmer? Friday the 13th had like 15 installments. Obviously this transfers to reality. You see how stupid that sounds? And yes, I'm aware that this is a fictional story with light sci-fi elements, but so far the supernatural has not been a thing established in the show. Yet. We'll get to that in a second. Also consider the following. This is what happened to her. I don't think you can come back from that. Obviously, Daphne's lesbian cop moms reject Velma's demands to exhume Fred's mom's grave, because it would cost too much and because it's absolutely insane. Fred has an equally insane theory. It was not Shaggy's dead grandma's ghost. He's still convinced that his mom was simply possessed by this woman, causing her to kill hot teenagers, again, the show's words, not mine. He also has a partner in this endeavor to hunt down this non-existent ghost.
'Cause Freddy's partnered up with another smoking hot white dude. Jesus.
I'm just gonna put aside my own religious convictions and ignore the blatant blasphemy of that statement and just ask, What? So apparently Fred has converted to Catholicism in order to gain access to holy water to fight the ghost, even though holy water is more of a weapon against vampires and demons. Plus, I doubt the Catholic Church would approve giving holy water to a teenager so he could put it in a water pistol and shoot ghosts. Anyway, a random goth girl shows up to the crime scene and beats down Velma in an argument, which, I'm not gonna lie, is pretty satisfying to watch. She and her mom have recently moved into town to open an occult bookstore. And there's her mom now.
Amber's our friend Thorne's kid.
I was in a band called the Hex Girls.
Oh no! Look how they massacred my girl. You hit the wall hard. They turned you into Nancy Pelosi going through a goth phase. Velma turns to Not Shaggy for help with her investigation for whatever reason. She stands outside his home and begs him to text her like a spurned lover, but he's too busy hallucinating evil Fred and stress eating. He's also getting a green crew neck from his mom and a weed from his father. It feels like the show's trying to overcorrect now.
I said we're lost in a fog.
You buzzed?
Downstairs, Velma is greeted by a Mr. Swindig. Who is that?
He's just a brilliant biology teacher who could get you an internship and any criminology lab you want.
Oh, thanks, Velma. He apparently had a past relationship with Velma's mom or something. I don't know, I'm just gonna move on to the next scene. Daphne meets Fred at the church to ask him about her love life, mainly because Fred is literally the only other teenager in the cast for her to talk to. He's a crazy, stupid rich kid who believes his mom was possessed and is now teaming up with the parish to hunt the ghost. Not to mention that he's a bit of a misogynist, and yet you want his advice on how to deal with your lesbian relationship. Fred says that if Velma is Daphne's longtime friend, then she should be trusted when she says she doesn't have feelings for Not Shaggy anymore. First, no, are we forgetting that Velma is a chronic liar, especially when it comes to this relationship stuff? Second, where is this legitimate attempt at relationship advice coming from, Fred?
But if you want to make out to get back at Velma, I'm down for that too.
And he's back. It's the classic stupid character says something surprisingly astute before going back to being dumb joke trope. Except in order for this to work, the stupid character actually has to have some sort of intelligence. Like, they'd have to be generally stupid, but really particularly skilled when it comes to a specific area.
What? Just because I'm a meathead doesn't mean I'm not a feminist.
Fred isn't like that. He's an all-rounder moron, particularly when it comes to the romantic endeavors. So, this joke, and I use the term lightly, just makes his character inconsistent. Why am I bothering to explain this? This is Velma. And this is Velma trying to dig up a body. But she's attacked by a mystery man. He disappears, leaving behind a shoe. Instead of just finishing the exhumation of Fred's mom, Velma returns home where her mom finds out about the new mystery and forbids her from any more mystery solving, determined to follow her to make sure of this. So naturally, Velma is able to immediately get rid of her in the next scene by stealing her nicotine gum. She's hanging out at a restaurant with the hot girls. Daphne's gay cop moms are there too, working with Amber and goth Nancy Pelosi on a campaign for sheriff, even though only one person can take the position. Don't know how that's gonna work out for him. Anyway, Velma's life is looking a bit better. She found a fingerprint on the shoe, and Daphne, at the behest of Fred, is now totally on board for being in lesbians with her. Except now Velma doesn't know if she wants to commit anymore. You gotta love her. You just gotta love Velma. Fred and Not Shaggy emerge from the bathroom. Holy crap, is everyone in town here at this place? Not Shaggy is begging for Fred's forgiveness, but Fred says no. Fred's dogs chew up Velma's shoe clue and leave with their owner. Velma gets Not Shaggy to follow, but he has an evil Fred hallucination on the road.
You killed my mom. She was the bomb.
Like, isn't that a laugh?
Yeah.
As she looks for some food to quell the hallucination, she finds the other shoe, forcing him to reveal that he also went to the cemetery last night because he also thought that Fred's mom was still alive. Once again, I don't think so. Trust me, she's dead. At the very least, there is some reason for him to think so. If Fred's mom is still alive, then his guilt for causing this would be gone. That's a bit of a better reason than, oh well, the Nightmare on Elm Street series had 8 movies. Anyway, he saw the attack and stole the other shoe. Man, this is one clumsy attacker. Dude really went home in the middle of the night with no shoes on. Jeez. Meanwhile, Daphne comes home to find out that Amber and goth Nancy Pelosi are moving in. Amber accidentally discloses that Daphne's gay cop moms have been planning their sheriff campaign for the past 3 weeks, even though the dead sheriff was found yesterday. Ooh, maybe they're the killer. I mean, obviously they aren't. This is the first episode of a mystery series. I've seen enough of these to know the first suspects are never the culprit. Most of the time. More importantly, Daphne gets a text from Velma. Instead of fully explaining the current situation and the context behind it, she says that she's at the funeral home with not Shaggy, which obviously flares up that whole relationship insecurity in Daphne. The home is having a funeral for dead sheriff, but Velma is surprised to find that his body's missing. Honestly, it's not that surprising considering the body was found yesterday. It takes a little while to embalm someone and prepare them for a funeral. That's why funerals are usually held a few days after someone's death and not the immediate day after. Especially when someone has been brutally murdered like that. Fred pops up and blames the dead grandma again.
Ghosts aren't real.
Until the truth comes out, I will be on the warpath of revenge.
Oh God, it's the ghost of Sheriff Cogburn. Hide!
Get it? It's funny because she said one thing and then she said the opposite.
Daphne, there's something funny going on here.
So why aren't we laughing?
But no, it's not the ghost of dead sheriff. It's the dead sheriff's identical voice twin because somehow this show can still afford Stephen Root. The role whiplash from Barry to this is absolutely insane. The teenage trio hop into the coffin to hide as Stephen Root's voice walks in arguing with Daphne's gay cop moms. He wants to see his brother's body, but they arrest him for literally no reason. Also, why are they here? Did they know he was coming? They were just game planning a sheriff campaign. And if they already know that there's nobody in the coffin, first, suspicious, but also, why are they not constantly standing guard here to make sure no one else comes in like, I don't know, a group of notoriously meddling kids? Velma and Not Shaggy do some coping in the coffin about how they aren't into each other anymore, but they're interrupted by Daphne who tells them about her moms. I guess we solved that whole dramatic relationship cliffhanger already. That's cool. I love just getting rid of something you set up almost immediately after introducing it. Fred tries to shoehorn his way into the investigation, but his dogs destroy the remaining shoe.
Maybe solving mysteries with dogs is a mistake.
Maybe co-opting an existing property and shoehorning yourself into it was a mistake, Mindy. I mean Velma. I mean Fred. Shut up, all of you. Be quiet. Velma and Daphne plan to investigate the gay cop moms during their fundraiser that night. Velma distracts her mom with her attraction towards Schwindig so she and Daphne can sneak off, but the moms catch them. They explain that they had found the leftovers of dead sheriff's murder 3 weeks ago, and instead of reporting a giant blood smear on the wall and a missing sheriff, they decided to focus on advancing their own careers. Well, I guess to give them credit, they'll fit right into the political world. They also reveal that the stuff from Velma's mom's cold case is part of the evidence, but the journals from Not Shaggy's dead grandma are missing. Amber, who for whatever reason came with the gay cop mom, says that Swingding has been obsessively talking about Not Shaggy's grandma at the fundraiser, so that obviously means in Velma's mind that he's for sure the killer and he's going to kill her mom. But not to worry because her mom is back home writing mystery books and is willing to let Velma solve them IRL. Velma starts by asking Swing-a-Ding-Dong to tell her about Not Shaggy's dead grandma. He agrees, but then is murdered. Also, he has herpes.
I have herpes.
So I guess both plotlines that the episode set up for Velma's mom are now just not happening. So, that's cool. Later, Velma and Daphne are about to have a romantic evening, but Velma gets all, actually about the term soulmates. I don't get what Daphne sees in her. Oh, also Fred decides to forgive Not Shaggy since he's just now realized he's a Catholic and that's kind of like a thing that they do. But that doesn't stop the hallucinations. You know what, this could have been worse, but it's still bad. The characters are still all self-centered assholes with Velma being the worst offender, but at least Not Shaggy's guilt for killing someone, no matter how justified the killing was, has potential to be interesting, I guess. I wrote this before watching the rest of the show. It's not really gonna go anywhere for him. The next episode revolves around yet another stupid, quirky holiday thing that only serves to move the plot along. This was a common practice in Season 1 from what I remember. This time, it's Creaky Friday. It is a day in which students are randomly paired up with each other to go oil up doors. Yeah, that'll catch on. Velma is enjoying her popularity, reaping those benefits.
People even copy my style.
I know it's supposed to be cheeky, but the sheer gall to say that the original versions of these characters are copies of Mindy Kaling and the Asian chick she emotionally abuses is just so infuriating. Daphne is still upset about the fact that Velma doesn't believe in soulmates, but as we know, Velma is a cynical asshole, so she doubles down on making fun of the basic idea of two people being meant to be together. Anyway, Shlong Dong hasn't shown up to class, and the principal and gay cop moms show up to announce that he's gone missing.
Another middle-aged white guy. Is someone targeting smartwatch users?
What? Is that a stereotype that I don't know about? From what I see, this is like a Zoomer or young business people thing. My dad is a middle-aged white man. He can barely operate his Fitbit. What the hell is he gonna do with a smartwatch? Also, would the obvious connection not be Not Shaggy's dead grandma? Her journals were stolen from the site of dead sheriff's death, and Swing D had an obsession with her. Man, Sherlock is quaking in his boots right now from the brain power of Velma. The gay cop moms also announced that they'll arrest any kid caught investigating into Swig Swug's disappearance. That doesn't stop Fred and Velma, though. Velma is still adamant that Fred's mom is behind all of this, despite the very noticeable evidence otherwise. But Fred declares that he has an image that will prove once and for all that his mom is dead. Is it a picture of this? I feel like this is a good picture right there.
What's that picture of? Your mom? And that's not just a classic burn, I'm serious.
Shut the fuck up. The police don't want us investigating, and if the church has taught me anything, it's to question nothing.
Ah, nice. We got some r/atheism humor here. In order to see this picture, Velma decides to rig the Creaky Friday drawing so that she gets paired up with Fred for the hinge oiling. She uses Daphne to pull off her schemes, which also leaves her free to become partners with Amber.
But I actually manifested us being paired together.
Oh, you're gonna be fun, aren't you? Anyway, Fred, in a rare moment of above room temperature IQ, immediately recognizes that Velma arranged this pairing, so she takes him to Swangdong's house where they figure out he's dead. Velma blackmails Fred into showing her the photograph back at his house.
By the way, he's hidden it in a shrine to his mom, which, that's a thing now, I guess.
Anyway, Fred reveals that someone had hired him to find the killer, sending him a photo of a ghost fleeing the scene of the crime, and Velma thinks she's seen that ghost before. They find him at the costume store, where they discover that Not Shaggy was the last guy to rent it, triggering Velma's memory of a scene from last season. If she could have remembered this earlier, maybe we wouldn't have even needed this scene. Not Shaggy has for some reason been able to opt out of the Creaky Friday event, even though this seemed to be a required school thing, and he has instead been testing the hot girl brains to make a map of their anxiety, without their knowledge no less, because why just be upfront about anything? I guess he gives them skateboards for their trouble. Fred and Velma kick in the door to his bedroom, triggering another dead mom hallucination. You know, Velma should know that bursting into a room declaring your supposed friend who is struggling with guilt over killing someone to be a murderer is probably not the best way to go about things, but what do I know? Not Shaggy reveals that he had used the ghost costume to sneak into the police station and steal his dead grandma's files. He's been using them to find a cure for his sixth sense vision, even though these seem to be a more recent occurrence than 3 weeks ago. He's forced to reveal that he has been running tests on the brains first to make sure the journals work and the brains get all pissy and leave. Fred and Velma also leave, with Velma determining him not to be the killer, because why would a guy dealing with extreme guilt over accidentally killing someone in self-defense intentionally commit murder? In that case, why do this?
Did you kill Cogburn?
Especially since now Fred is convinced that Not Shaggy is the killer. Meanwhile, Daphne and Amber set out to clean some hinges, with Amber claiming that together they're going to manifest a Creaky Friday victory. Wait, this is a competition? How in the world do you track this with the assurance that these kids are going to be telling the truth? Whatever. Anyway, instead of a victory, Amber manifests a car. Man, reminds me of the good old days. One more time, run that back. However, Amber somehow gets away without so much as a scratch. This is because manifestation can somehow protect you from a hit and run. But now that they're in the hospital, the pair find a plethora of squeaky hinges to oil. Daphne is now getting into manifesting, and now she and Amber manifest a creepy gay morgue attendant to bring them more squeaky hinges. And I don't mean that as an insult, like the morgue attendant is also gay. Much like a good chunk of the cast. It's like someone went through here stabbing people with the gay blade.
Zoinks! It's the gay blade!
However, 2 of the cabinets have cadavers in them, which turn out to be dead Sheriff and Swingdong, both of whom have missing Swingdings. Daphne calls Velma to the hospital to fill her and Fred in. Daphne sees the ghost photo and tells Velma that it's from a police surveillance camera, which, yeah, I thought that was pretty obvious. It's a picture of a dude in a ghost costume leaving the police station in the middle of the night. What else would it be? Still, this prompts Velma and Fred to pay a visit to Daphne's gay cop moms. Daphne stays behind to oil up some hinges since Velma still refuses to acknowledge soulmates. At the police station, Velma and Fred get black gay cop mom to admit that she had secretly hired Fred behind white gay cop mom's back.
But only because we have no leads and he's a supernatural expert.
In what way? And since when? Since the last episode where he just announced that he thinks a ghost killed someone? If that's all it takes, I think a ghost killed O.J. Simpson. If any detective wants to reach out, my rates are $500 down, $1,000 a week, and a $200 bonus upon closing. Just reach out to my agent. The gay cop moms confessed that they've been covering up the murders and mutilations to not spook potential voters. Well, with a slogan like Linda and Donna for sheriff, I don't think you'll go too far. It didn't work for Hillary, I'm just saying. Plus, you guys aren't running against anybody, so why try to hide things from voters when you're their only choice? This invites people to challenge you, like whoever this meddling kid and his dog are, and Stephen Root's voice, who's on the phone. Fred is made an honorary sheriff to help with the investigation, and while he still thinks not Shaggy is the killer, he decides that Velma's faith in her friend is good enough for him to not pursue it. You're gonna be a great cop, Fred. This makes Velma realize how stupid she's being with the soulmates thing and decides to apologize to Daphne.
As we learn in my favorite passage from Genesis, there's too many men, too many people making too many problems, and not much love to go round.
Fred, please do more research on the Catholic Church.
Shut up, bitch!
Fred apostatizes because he finds out that tithing is a thing, and that very basic joke basically throws out any earnestness from the prior bits of dialogue. Fred's trust in Velma's faith is now negated for the sake of a joke. Velma's realization about the soulmates thing is now negated for the sake of a joke. Velma goes to apologize to Daphne and promises to be tolerant of the soulmates idea, but now Daphne has gone down the manifesting pipeline. She's gonna become one of those TikTok astrology chicks if you don't stop her. The episode ends with one of the brain girls coming back to not Shaggy and wanting to help him because she thinks he's hot. Stephen Root's voice announces that he's running for sheriff because the only candidates are deputizing teenagers and hiding bodies. What did I just say? And then Velma comes home to find her mom in bed with Fred's dad after interviewing him earlier in the episode.
I forgot you had a kid.
I hate that Frank Welker is in this.
In any other show, this would be a nice role to use to pass the torch to a new voice actor, like what Mystery Inc. does with Casey Kasem and Matthew Lillard, but this just feels like a humiliation ritual.
Especially because this show just feels like it is embarrassed to be in any way connected to the Scooby-Doo franchise.
Because nothing's trashier or more pedo-tinged than teens in an old van.
Frank Welker has been voicing Fred Jones since this franchise started, the only voice actor to stick with the franchise up until this point. Granted, because he hasn't died or retired yet, but I still feel depressed hearing him in this role. Oh yeah, apparently the gay morgue attendants were killed in a post-credit scene, and I missed this because I just wanted to skip to the next episode, so oops. Episode 3! Episode 3 picks right up with Velma walking in on her mom. She has an inner monologue about how much she hates rich people more than anything else. And that's why she doesn't like this situation. Not for any normal reason a teenager would be opposed to their divorced mother having sex with basically their rival's dad. Fred's dad wants to assuage these worries by inviting Velma to his house for a family meal, but Fred arrives and protests this because he's supposed to be receiving help for his science fair project. Yeah, so apparently the science fair is a thing now, and I guess it'll be the framing device for this episode. I don't know why this wasn't mentioned beforehand, but it's a thing now. You'd think something as big as Creaky Friday or the science fair would have been mentioned before the episode in which it happens, but I guess we need some way to artificially move the plot forward. And a vehicle to usher in so much pointless drama to distract us from the fact that there's a mystery afoot. It seems like Velma's mom is the only person not aware of the science fair, and she's pissed that Velma isn't doing it, so again we're gonna do the whole Velma's mom disapproves of mystery solving but ultimately lets Velma do it thing from episode 1. Cool, we're just gonna waste some more time in this season. This time around, Velma's mom makes a deal that if Velma wins the science fair, she'll break up with Fred's dad.
And promise no more dating rich guys, unless the actor Steven Yeun is rich.
Don't you dare bring my boy Steven Yeun into this. Stay away, Steven, for your own good. This spurs Velma to find a science fair project group to join, but her options are pretty limited. Daphne is doing a project with Amber.
Our project is manifesting.
That's not science. I guess they're gonna stick with that project anyways, and Daphne has to grapple with balancing her popularity with her new obsession with stupid white girl shit. Honestly, I'd think the popular girls would be into this, but I guess not. Of course, this deep, complex inner struggle is solved immediately in Daphne's next scene where she stands up to the popular girls. I guess the show just didn't have anything for her to do this episode. What makes this extra weird is that the goth girl also did this whole thing by coming out as a goth chick to the popular girls, but now she's doing the whole judging thing again. Like, I don't remember much of her from last season, but I feel like this is a character regression.
Okay, I had to scrub through season 1 while editing this, and all that really happens is the big change and the popular girls just kind of act like nothing happened. If anything, this should mean that they're more accepting of different lifestyle choices than the show gives them credit for. Velma's other option is to work on an actual science project with Not Shaggy. He's working on an electrocution project with his brain girlfriend that will purge his guilt hallucinations for good. His dad thinks that good kush will be the solution, but because Not Shaggy desperately doesn't want to be too black, he's been using his friend's pee for his random drug tests. Hey, look, that's the real Shaggy. That's nice, I guess. Now this nondescript friend is going on trial in Miami, so Not Shaggy needs someone to replace the P. Velma volunteers for him, but only if he lets her in on the science project. Oh, also Not Shaggy's dad got hired to be a judge for the fair so he can pay back some mafia guys. That'll be important for like one scene later. Anyway, Velma basically immediately forgets about her promise, as per usual, once it's time to visit the Jones estate. She immediately pulls a Hassan Piker and abandons her declarations of eating the rich the second she's presented with the good life. Fred's dad woos her over with some pink lemonade and a musical number that is weirdly mixed much lower than the normal dialogue and even the sound effects.
Washing a bath of ancient treasure. Here's a robot that thinks you're clever.
Fred tries to stop the musical, but Velma goes the path of many socialists before her and chooses money over principles. Fred is bummed and goes to his room where Velma's mom offers to help him finish his science project, and he reluctantly agrees. After a montage of people working on their science projects and Velma being a horrible person, the science fair arrives. Velma shows up late without the pee that Not Shaggy entrusted her to get, so he's forced to electrocute himself prematurely despite the fact that his machine is a little deadly. Still, he zoots himself with electricity and his hallucinations are cured. Yay. I was going to try to make that a little more enthusiastic, but I just don't have the energy. Fred does a little test run of his science experiment on where toast comes from, and Velma's mom gives him a hug, which he likes but also kind of hates. But he also kind of loves it.
Little Freddy feel cozy.
His dad, meanwhile, pays off the mafia guys to force Not Shaggy's dad to give Velma first place in the science fair, causing the entire school to turn against her. See, I told you that was going to be important later. This loss of popularity is what finally convinces Velma to give up the grift. If only we could do the same thing with Hassan. Velma's mom allows Velma to solve mysteries anyway, making this whole bet pointless, and Velma rejects the first place ribbon, giving it instead to Not Shaggy, who then gives it to Fred since he just copied off his dead grandma. Fred thanks Not Shaggy for giving him more support than his own father, which makes Mr. Jones feel bad and give him a hug. Daphne's manifesting BS didn't work, obviously, but Amber pulls some televangelist-type move in order to gaslight her into pursuing witchcraft. And finally, Not Shaggy's little electrocution project has the side effect of lack of empathy, even though he just gave up the first prize to someone he felt deserved more. I would say that was an empathetic move, but I guess now we need him to be an unempathetic jerk to his father so that he and the rest of the cast can receive detention. As if one unempathetic jerk in this cast wasn't bad enough. And that's pretty much it for episode 3. If you noticed, I didn't mention the overall mystery at all, and that's because it was almost never mentioned. Outside of this after credits scene where the hot girl's science rat finds White Shoes person chilling with the dead coroners in the sewer. It's like the show has to beg you to keep watching it after an episode full of bad jokes about rich folks, dumb character drama, and a contrived plotline to basically get everybody together for a Breakfast Club ripoff. Oh shoot, they're gonna rip off Breakfast Club, aren't they?
Hey, your Saturday detention looks just like the Breakfast Club.
We're doing a Breakfast Club, baby.
I freaking knew it. Though I didn't expect them to be so blatant about it. To be fair, this episode attempts to subvert the Breakfast Club reference by making it a meta anti-reference commentary on how we like to reference 80s stuff. Which, while true if you look at some of the more popular shows of the recent decade, that's about the extent Velma gets into it. In classic Velma fashion, crap on a thing?
No one in their right mind is still making 80s references, but teens are over 80s references.
Before proceeding to do the very thing, but because they're self-aware, that makes it commentary somehow. I'm so sick of this brand of meta humor / commentary. It's embarrassing. It's like if your child poops his pants after you tell him not to, but he says he did it on purpose to show how it's a bad thing to do. That's cool and all, but you still pooped your pants. But according to this episode, it's the big thing my generation is into, so I'm not allowed to complain. Actually, aren't you a millennial, Mindy? Quit telling me what my people like. You old fogey? So the actual plot is that basically every named teenager in the show is put in detention, with not Shaggy's dad wanting them to do a breakfast club and experience catharsis through rebellion against him. Velma and Daphne are on the outs over witchcraft, with Daphne blaming Velma for never giving Amber a chance.
Like they were a female late-night talk show host.
Look, sweetheart, we gave Lily Singh a chance. She just crapped the bed. Not Shaggy's empathy is coming back, which means that the random plot development at the end of the previous episode was just a cheap plot device to get us here. It also means that his hallucinations are coming back. However, Amber believes that he's actually being haunted by the ghost of Fred's mom, so the group decides to do a seance. Except they have to do it without not Shaggy's dad noticing, so as not to give him the satisfaction of doing an 80s reference rebellion while they do an 80s reference rebellion. Meta humor is so freaking obnoxious, holy crap. Velma sees this as a perfect opportunity to prove to Daphne witchcraft is nonsense, and she sets out to lay a trap for Amber. She gets Goth Girl and Popular Girl to come with her to gather some Bunsen burners to use as candles. Together, they plan to sabotage the seance by getting Amber to fake summon the spirit of a person who is very much alive. Fred, Daphne, and Brain Girl go to Fred's locker to retrieve a personal effect of Fred's mom in order to summon her. They find a locket with pictures of those shoe-eating dogs inside. Fred figures it's not as good as the presumable locket with him and his dad inside, but it'll do. Unfortunately, Shaggy's principal mom catches them in their hijinks and puts her husband in detention with her kids to make sure they aren't up to anything. However, he's just brought in on the nonsense and is sent to distract his wife so they can do the seance. You know, it probably wasn't the best idea to assign your husband, who really wants to help these kids rebel against authority, to be the authority in charge of these kids. That's just asking for trouble. But before they get started, Daphne forces Goth Girl to expose Velma's plans, so Daphne has to convince her girlfriend to go along with it by appealing to her only spiritual experience of going to a Beyoncé concert. I guess all women just really like Beyoncé. And the thing that finally convinces Velma to go along with this is the group renaming this event to a seance. I'm cutting out so many bad jokes, but some of these just have to be mentioned by how much they made me cringe.
I'm just way more invested now that it's also about me.
Look, I don't like to advocate for violence against teenage girls, but I'm struggling really hard not to make an exception here. And for legal reasons, Velma is a fictional character. I am not actually advocating for violence against anybody. I just need Mindy to reconsider her life decisions. And now, the seance can begin with a Beyoncé song, because of course. I don't think that's how seances work, by the way. Amber, you're the witchcraft expert. Do Beyoncé songs summon spirits? Because I don't think they do.
Did George R.R. Martin finally release his next novel? Or are my nipples erect because the temperature just dropped?
Get it? Because winds of winter and forget this. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore, man. Hi, I'm Spidgey's identical voice twin. He has asked me to carry on the rest of the video for him as he, cries in a corner. Things start getting bananas, and Fred finds an inscription on his mom's locket that reveals that she, in fact, only ever cared for her dogs. Woof. Velma catches Amber sneaking around and tosses some accusations that this whole thing was fake. She does a typical mystery deconstruction from other Scooby-Doo incarnations, but in a much more unlikable way because this is Velma and not Scooby-Doo. It's not a new thing for Velma to be the skeptic of the gang, always looking for a rational solution to any seemingly supernatural problem. I mean, it's been a thing since episode 1 of Where Are You? However, she remains a likable character because she remains friendly towards the gang and gently pushes against any assertions of the supernatural. Not Mindy Kaling, though.
It's not the unknown that freaks me out. It's idiots like you who ignore facts and science that do.
Yep, she just straight up calls Daphne a moron. Mind you, in this iteration, these aren't just best friends, but also a romantic couple who are supposed to be soulmates. She unironically just called her girlfriend an idiot, a moron even. Real smooth, Mindy. Real smooth. Obviously, this has to sever that relationship, but, we'll see. Again, I write these scripts for each episode without watching the next episode. Yeah, somehow these two don't break up after this. They just remain a couple. I don't understand how you don't break up with someone after they just unironically called you a moron for something that you believe in. Look, I get that this is a thing that she's experimenting with and not fully sold on, but even so, you should probably not keep dating someone who not just disagrees with a lifestyle change, but openly derides it. and insults your intelligence while they're at it. It'd be like me dating a girl who openly hates and mocks Christianity, like Mindy Kaling apparently. But let's say you are dating someone who decides to make a lifestyle change. I would expect a decent person to try to at least be understanding about it, even if they question it. Calling your partner an idiot to their face should be an absolute deal breaker, but I guess Daphne is suffering from some form of Stockholm syndrome. That's the only thing I can think of. After that, everyone goes home with Fred now completely out of love with his mom, but not Shaggy stays behind to clean some stuff up. He finds an incredibly conspicuous folder from the local insane asylum sticking out of the late Mr. Swigden's drawer. Like, seriously, how has nobody noticed this before? It's just sitting there. He opens the folder to a list of faculty members, with one name being highlighted, which Not Shaggy thinks is an anagram for his dead grandma's name, meaning she might not be quite so dead. Also, Velma's dad, who has pretty much only had glorified cameos up until this point in the season, gets a side plot where he just wanders around the school daydreaming about the day he got detention with Not Shaggy's parents and Goth Girl's dad, who grew up to become a military man. Apparently, Velma's dad broke a statue, but Goth Girl's dad convinced him to sue the school and join his dad's law firm. Not Shaggy's mom wrote an article about it, and Velma's dad steals it in order to convince Goth Girl's dad to talk to him again. The only reason I bring it up now is I'm sure it'll probably become important, seeing as how the season has just ignored Velma's dad up until this point. But this is yet another thing we'll have to see if the show continues to build upon or walk back for the sake of another dumb episodic plot. You already know what choice the show makes, don't you? Episode 5 decides not to pursue that plot line at all and tackle the pressing modern issue of social media.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Daphne is posting disses on Velma on ye olde socials, prompting Velma to try to figure out how to get back at her, which I guess leads her back to the school to take pictures of herself reading a How to Get a New Girlfriend book. Not toxic behavior at all. Instead of finding some way to fix her relationship, she finds the bodies of the gay coroners. Velma immediately blames this on Amber and feels validated in her claims when she sees that Daphne has changed back to her old character model. However, Daphne claims to still be into witchery, but that's something we'll address later. But for now, her gay cop moms don't want Velma spreading anything about these deaths, but she takes pictures of the bodies anyways. The gay cop moms use Velma as a shield during a press conference to calm the crowd after Stephen Root's voice riles them up. Velma plays her part, but Fred, being the moron he is, accidentally lets the witchery connection slip. Velma later gets called to her dad's house, where the formerly pregnant waitress tells her that she witnessed Amber burning some stuff in the backyard last night, confirming to Velma that Amber is in fact the killer. Formerly pregnant waitress tells Velma to post the pictures of the bodies, which she does, and they go viral, whipping up a literal witch hunt against Amber and Goth Nancy Pelosi. Oh, and by the way, the only reason Velma is hesitant about this at all is because she doesn't think it'll get likes. Not the moral quandaries of leveling a potentially false accusation or interfering with police procedures. Daphne's gay cop moms provide an alibi for Amber's whereabouts, which was being in the backyard burning campaign signs for Stephen Root's voice, which formerly pregnant waitress witnessed, which means that Velma knew the alibi and just ignored it to start a witch hunt. Because if the waitress witnessed Amber doing shady stuff last night, which is when the bodies were put in the school, then Amber literally could not have been the killer. All of this is explained to the crowd, but it only riles them up further.
Let's show everyone how brave we are! Stand up to the witches! Remove your britches!
The writing in this show is embarrassing. Velma tries to get Fred to help calm down the crowd, but he will only do so if she helps him figure out her mom's ring size because his dad is planning to propose. This is pretty much immediately thrown out as a plot point because Velma's mom finds out off screen and says no. Fred's dad tries to save Amber to get a love spell, but that doesn't really go as planned. Fred opts out as well, since now the crowd will add anyone who disagrees with them to the pyre. You get the metaphor?
As Americans, we'd rather destroy anyone who points out our delusions than admit we might be wrong.
Stephen Root's voice, who has only been doing this for his campaign and is worried about this getting out of hand as well, tries to help by blaming social media for the crowd's bloodlust, but they instead just blame Velma for this and put her on the stake. Honestly, I can't argue against that. This is all her fault. Velma's mom tries to help, but gets put on the stake as well. Unfortunately, Velma figures out a way to get out of this situation by using a discount Photoshop app that she tried to use earlier in the episode to seduce Daphne into talking to her to enlarge the wieners of the murder victims.
The killer is only targeting men with huge dongs, so if you don't have a huge dong, stay here as long as you want. You're fine. Everyone will just know you have a small dong.
Wait, wouldn't that mean that the guys who want to claim they have big dongs stay behind and finish killing Velma and Amber? The whole reason they were there is because they thought the killer was targeting middle-aged white dudes, so they wanted to make sure they weren't killed, so if they wanted to prove they had big dongs, they would stay, right? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. How does this solve anything? I get that now they know that Amber isn't the killer and that the killer is still out there, but they've already shown that their safety isn't something they particularly care about in the face of mob mentality. But I guess in the Velma universe, male insecurity trumps mob mentality because men bad. The show is so stupid, it's rotting my brain. Also, why are the women leaving? They don't even have dongs. No, they don't even have dongs. It seems like fate isn't satisfied with this, me neither, and tries to kill every prominent character here, but unfortunately Velma's dad puts out the fire in order to save formerly pregnant waitress's garden. The show could have ended here. I could have been done with this, but no. We have to keep going.
Will you excuse me a second? No! Why?
Velma for once actually apologizes for her actions. I mean, she basically almost got Amber killed with a false murder accusation fueled by her anger at not being able to fully control Daphne's actions, but sure. An apology will make it all better.
It's honestly not okay, but according to my runestones, you'll get what's coming to you soon enough.
At least we're teasing some form of cosmic punishment, maybe. Also, Waitress wants to get married, but Velma's dad doesn't. Look, I don't care about any of the relationship drama in the show. None of it gets developed past it existing for jokes until the plot needs it. Remember in the last episode they were setting up something with his relationship with the military? What happened to that? So, what did we learn from this storyline? People sometimes lie on social media and sometimes people will believe it, but they'll rectify their mistakes by burning the original liars at the stake. I think that's what it's trying to say, if it's trying to say anything at all. Meanwhile, Daphne stumbles into Not Shaggy's plotline while trying to avoid Velma.
Please stop ignoring me. I'm your girlfriend, and we just need to talk about Amber until you admit I'm right.
Honestly, who can blame her at this point? Personally, I would have broken up with her by now, but I guess Daphne just thinks this is the rocky part of the relationship. On their way to the insane asylum, Daphne admits that she has ditched witchery because it's just not her thing. But she may be able to figure something out at the asylum. Yes, the building full of insane people will help you figure out who you are, Daphne. The pair find out that Not Shaggy's dead grandma is actually alive. She's been hiding out from the government to continue working on her brain experiments. Turns out the US government didn't like that her experiments allowed soldiers to discover themselves, leading to en masse military abandonments, but the rich people seem to like this life catharsis, as does Daphne. Really lucky you ended up coming here then. Not Shaggy's no longer dead grandma also reveals that the hot brain girls are going to die soon if they don't get their juices changed, but she can't leave to help for fear of the US military seeing her. Daphne offers up her body so she can do some self-discovery while Not Dead Grandma is out.
You're suggesting my grandma do a reverse Get Out? That movie's a modern classic. I don't think Jordan Peele needs our take on it.
Oh, shut up. No one needs your take on anything. And there's another post-credit scene with yet another murder of a middle-aged white dude, this time a TikTok priest.
LOL, Lord of Light.
And with that, we're halfway through the season, and what has really happened in the plot so far? Someone is killing middle-aged white guys via castration, and someone in white shoes, our prime suspect, has framed witches to cause an episode-long diversion. Velma's dad has a connection with Goth Girl's military dad, which was randomly introduced in a shoehorned B-plot, but that'll eventually become important to the main plot, as will Not Shaggy's no longer dead grandma. That's about it. It's been 5 episodes, by the way. 5, and that's all that's happened in regards to the main plot. Instead, the show has been more focused on Velma being a controlling, emotionally abusive girlfriend, Daphne trying witchery out for a bit before deciding that that's not what she wants to be, Not Shaggy suffering from hallucinations and finding out his grandma's still alive, and Fred making some emotional growth. Only one of those feels substantive from a character perspective. Holy crap, this was a waste of my time. Anyway, now it's career day, yet another big event that has had no build-up. Velma gets the opportunity to meet Not Dead Grandma. Velma is currently experiencing self-doubt from not being able to solve the Knob Gobbler murders, causing her to question if she can even pursue being a PI. This would feel more earned if Velma had actually worked on solving the mystery instead of fueling a personal vendetta against a they-them witch for 4 episodes. You know, some people may consider that a hate crime, Velma. Nonetheless, Not Dead Grandma offers up some advice.
I'm not heartless. It's just that feelings create distractions, and
you must eliminate those in order to be great and achieve your dreams.
Velma and Not Dead Grandma go to Swan Duck's lab to make some new solution liquid for the brains. Apparently he stole some leftover research from Project Scooby that contains the formula for the solution. He wasn't just a fan of Not Dead Grandma, he actually worked for the military with her. Not Shaggy brings in the brains to get their fluids changed, but Velma screws up the concoction. You had one job, Velma. Couldn't even do that right. What makes things worse is that Amber finds them and uses vague spiritual powers to recognize Daphne isn't really Daphne before being knocked out. On the upside, Not Dead Grandma has some leftover solution back at the old military labs, so she sends Velma to fix her mistakes. Once alone, she explains to Not Shaggy that Velma's going to fail, so it's best to abandon the Brain Girls to their fate and move on. However, in a surprisingly selfless move from one of the main characters, Not Shaggy says that instead, he's going to make the last day of their lives a happy one by helping them perform a musical act for Career Day, because they're musicians now. Not Dead Grandma doesn't understand this decision, but she acquiesces and helps to build some attachments for the Brain Girls to play instruments. She also encounters her daughter, who she finds out doesn't respect her for leaving the kitchen and joining the workforce. Instead of accepting this gracefully, Not Dead Grandma chooses to insult her daughter. This gets Daphne suspended from school. After witnessing her grandson have another hallucination attack, she realizes that she's been selfish her whole life and admits that she has only sent Velma to the military base to verify if Project Scooby is still running or not. She's actually had what she's needed to make more of the solution the whole time. I don't know why she didn't make any more sooner, since her whole plan just involved waiting. I know she still needs to learn empathy for other people, but she could have still helped the Brain Girls out instead of just watching them die, or wasting time helping them to become Van Brainlin. No, wait, Neuralsmith. No, wait, actually, the Talking Heads. I think that last one will stick. Anyway, that is part of the reason you came here, right? But hey, at least she went through some form of a character arc and unlocked empathy, which is more than can be said for most of the other characters. Speaking of which, let's check in with some of them. Fred is returning some of his Catholic stuff back to the church. I don't know why he didn't do this sooner than now. He quit being Catholic like 4 episodes ago. He's had plenty of time to return the stuff he doesn't want, but this timing conveniently coincides with the only priest in town being killed, so the plot can move forward, I guess. Fred hears someone trying to give confession. Since he quite literally has nothing better to do in this episode, he decides to take it. The old female parishioner seems to really like Fred and asks for his number before vanishing. Normally I would ask why a parishioner would see fit to flirt with a priest and ask for his number, but there's going to be something revealed later that adds a whole new level of stupid to this. Fred then goes to ask Velma for advice on how to date older women, since Daphne is apparently a month older than her, which is clearly the same as an old woman trying to date a teenager. You also have to love how this age gap between Velma and Daphne wasn't added until just now, because we really need Fred involved with Velma's plotline and they couldn't think of a better way to do it. Also, it's strange how no character brings up the fact that an older woman is flirting with Fred right now. Like, they'll go on tirades all day about how older men are creepy, but we have a core plot point of Fred thinking that he's flirting with an older woman, and no one sees any issue with it. Feel like something could be mentioned about standards and there being 2 of them? Velma chooses to ignore him and goes to ask her dad to get Goth Girl's military dad to give her a tour of the military base under the preconception of her enlistment. At least that plot point got brought back somewhat soon. Fred accidentally tags along since he smelled pennies, which reminded him of his mother, and got so angry that he passed out in Velma's dad's back seat. I legitimately don't know where this came from. Was his mother smelling like pennies a thing in the previous season, or did the writers just make this up to have a contrived reason for Fred to join in on the plot? I have a sneaking suspicion it's the latter. Goth Girl's military dad gives his VIP visitors a warm welcome.
VIP? Do you mean very important person, or my fanfic, Velma in Paris?
Wait, who is in Paris? On their tour, Velma allows Fred to join in on her mission, and when Goth Girl's dad accidentally sets off some missiles by smacking them with a tiny hammer, they take the opportunity to sneak off and find the room Not Dead Grandma marked for them. However, it turns out to just be a supply closet, but there's a hidden room in it, containing a new Project Scooby operation. Fred suddenly gets a call from his cougar friend, getting them caught by Goth Girl's military dad, who then gaslights the 2 of them into doubting what they saw. Also, it should be noted that while I do not address any of the parents by name because I frankly can't remember them, Goth Girl's military dad is literally just named Gigi's father. Like, His name is literally just, I'm the father of this other character, which should probably show the amount of effort that they put into characterizing these guys. The two get punished for sneaking off, with Fred being sent to court to defend the missile situation from earlier. I don't know why they decided it was a good idea to send an enlisted teenager who has a penchant for saying the wrong thing in front of crowds to handle military PR as opposed to, well, literally anyone else, but competence isn't something I expect from the characters in this show. For Velma's part, she's punished with doing recruitment at the career fair.
I was in the army.
Not Dead Grandma shows up and apologizes for misleading her. She explains that Velma has to decide between pursuing her dream career or the people she cares about.
Wait, so my choices are failure to achieve my dreams or selfish monster?
Yes.
Well, I think she's already made that decision. Not Dead Grandma then gives Velma the stuff to make more brain goop and runs to avoid her daughter. The brain girls are saved, and later Velma and the Rogers return to collect Daphne. However, her brain is missing because she was left in the nature room where she was kidnapped by cockroaches after trying to intervene in a cockroach bullying situation. No, I won't elaborate on that. Show doesn't bother to. Meanwhile, Fred gets a call from his cougar friend who asked to be put on speakerphone. She admits to everyone there that she's the serial killer before throwing the priest's corpse into the courtroom, which means she's nearby, so someone should probably go after her. But obviously they don't. Wait, so you mean to tell me that this was the killer's plan this whole episode? She kills the priest and sits in the confessional on the off chance someone walks in, decides to impersonate a priest, something no good Catholic would actually do, then said person would have to be attracted to an old woman enough to give out his number. All this could be swept away by saying Fred is the only Catholic person in town, seeing as how we never see a single other parishioner so far, or that the killer specifically waited for Fred to come here hoping he came alone and that the building was empty. But I ask you this, how would the killer know that Fred would smell pennies and pass out in the back of Velma's car long enough to be escorted to the military base? Even if she intentionally planted the pennies there, which I think is implied, how would she know Fred would go to Velma for relationship advice anyway? And how would she know that upon being caught, he would have to be the guy who would have to explain away the missile crisis that I just have to assume the killer caused in court so this reveal could happen? None of this makes any sense. There are an immense amount of coincidences that would have to happen just so the killer can be put in this specific situation. And to make this even dumber, this somehow causes the gay cop moms to lose the sheriff's election at the last possible second because they are women just like the killer. And you ain't ready for what happens next. As the new sheriff, Stephen Root's voice cordons off all the women into the mines because they think the killer is a woman, giving us the framing device for episode 7. He pays Amber and goth Nancy Pelosi off to leave town since they're they-thems. It seems like even the most progressive of people don't know how they factor into the battle of the sexes. Velma's primary goal in the mines is to keep her mom and her dad's waitress girlfriend separate so that they don't tear each other's heads off. This apparently stems from both of their insecurities as mothers and lovers, but at least they're able to bond with each other over Velma being a lazy, obnoxious child. The group gets banished to clean bat guano after getting offended by the gossiping wine moms joking about serial killers, and they think they hear her voice in the caverns. Turns out it's just Waitress's baby playing with a toy called a babble box, which has been used for some pointless, unfunny gags until this point, so I just didn't bother mentioning them.
Nap? Hungry. Election. Stolen. Witch hunt.
I guess I'll have to give the show props for incorporating a running joke into the show's plot, even if the joke wasn't all that funny to begin with. That may be the most I'll praise about the show, but we'll see where Fred ends up. Velma realizes that if the box can be used to change voices, then the killer could really just be anyone, so she gathers the feminine powers of gossip to put some pieces together. Goth Girl's dad had brought home some babble boxes from Project Scooby. That information invites the question of why the military didn't recognize their babble box being used during their court time and intervene in the cave woman silliness. Actually, how did none of the mothers here know about this function of the box? Even if they weren't being good parents and checking the capabilities of the device they're giving their children, I'd think that one of the babies would have accidentally stumbled upon the different voices just through normal playtime. The whole thing would have and should have been avoided. Some of the ladies had noticed that Swing Dong was talking about the same thing, even though we already know about his connection to the project, so I guess that's a little useless. A nurse had noticed the gay coroners go to meet with the victims, all of whom worked for Project Scooby, and a lawyer, who happens to be Velma's dad. Dun dun dun! Although, come to think of it, Velma should have already known about her dad's connection to Goth Girl's dad, with him indicating that he's worked for the military as a lawyer before in the previous episode. It's not all that hard of a connection to make independently. Meanwhile, Daphne has been made the queen of cockroaches. However, these bugs accidentally knock her out with rat blood, causing her to go on an inner mind journey with her biological parents. Her dad cuts to the heart of her insecurities by pointing out that they stem from her questioning of whether or not she's a good person. The answer comes from a memory with Amber after the failed seance, where Daphne is pissed about Velma ruining everything and wants to get back at her. The show teases that Daphne had cheated on Velma with Amber, but the show strings you along for like an episode and a half lying to you when it was really something else, but we'll get to that in a second. It's kind of strange that Daphne's entire arc up to this point has just been trying to discover herself and figure out where she fits in, and now her whole struggle has been reframed to her trying to figure out if she's a good person or not, even though that has really never been addressed up to this point. Or maybe it was, and it's just gotten drowned out by Velma being an infinitely more horrible person than her. Anyway, Daphne tears her biological parents' faces off. However, because she feels guilty about this whole thing, I guess that means she's overall a good person, and she sets out to admit her implied relational indiscretions to Velma. That's enough for her dad to show up and push her off a cliff, conveniently prompting her to wake up in her own body. Apparently, the flesh-eating cockroaches returned her brain after she shut down. The silly little carnivorous goobers. Those cockroaches are never getting addressed again. In the Velma universe, the cockroaches are the apex predators. They will eat the skin off your bones and will have sex in the in the high school bathroom. They have a very advanced society, and the show's just never going to address it. Honestly, I would just rather watch a show about the man-eating cockroaches. But in all seriousness, you could get rid of the underground roach warriors, and Daphne's time in the brain could have been restricted to one episode. They are really stretching out what little character development she has. Daphne goes to Velma, who I guess has accepted her witchery or whatever she's into, prompting Daphne to withhold her admittance. On the men's side of things, Not Shaggy is still experiencing hallucinations of Fred's mom, but she's weirdly a lot more chill now. After Not Dead Grandma told him that the hallucinations have an external trigger, he sets out to find it, thinking that Fred is the key to everything. However, even though Fred has accepted that his mother was a horrible person who never loved him, it's still too far for him to accept that she was also a serial killer. That was still a case of possession in his mind. Yeah, okay, this is just character regression for the sake of having this plot happen. That's all I'm chalking that up to. Also, didn't we already use Fred as the cure to hallucinations anyway? Why would convincing him that his mom was a killer and that Not Dead Grandma is not dead dissipate the hallucinations? I mean, Not Shaggy says that revealing the truth will free him, but he didn't even know that his grandma wasn't dead until a couple episodes ago, long after his hallucinations started. The reasoning behind this is just really weird. Anyway, Not Shaggy is determined to prove all this to Fred, even going as far as to interrupt a very important police investigation.
I know who it is! The guy sitting next to me looks like James Marsden.
Of course!
This is either a jury duty reference or just an awkward reference to a random actor. Who cares? Go watch Jury Duty. I wish I was doing that right now. It's much funnier than anything in the show.
Did you buy or rent Sonic? It's on Hulu. Bummer. If you would have bought it, I would have got $1.
In order to solve this argument once and for all, Stephen Root's voice proposes a chili cook-off to prove whether Not Shaggy is right or not. Because I guess that's a guy thing to do. Chili cook-offs are just like, stereotypical dude stuff. Don't get me wrong, I like me some chili as much as the next guy, but why was this specific choice made in the show? Well, how else are we going to feed sleeping pills to every guy in town so that Not Shaggy can kidnap Fred and take him to his not dead grandma? I guess it would have made more sense to put sleeping pills in the coffee or the water or whatever the guys are drinking, but, a chili cook-off is much funnier than that. Because you would never expect a sheriff to do a chili cook-off to solve a problem? Wow, that's so random. That means it's funny. Wow. That's hilarious. I'm laughing. Anyway, Fred is now convinced that Not Dead Grandma is not dead, so the hallucination of his mom goes away, except it doesn't.
What am I?
I mean, obviously you're a ghost, right? Wait, did you really think that as a sentient being, you were a figment of some kid's guilt psychosis? Man, you don't have to be a Rene Descartes enthusiast to know that makes absolutely no sense.
If you can have independent thought and consciousness, maybe that means you're not the figment of someone's imagination. Anyway, with all the men knocked out from not Shaggy's sleeping pills, the women are able to easily take Velma's dad into custody, which leads us directly into episode 8. Which starts with Velma's dad being immediately bailed out by the military and put under house arrest. Because I guess that's how the military protects state secrets. You know, it's crazy how often the show likes to reverse cliffhangers that it sets up. Instead of divulging the secrets behind Project Scooby to his daughter, Velma's dad only reveals that he witnessed Daphne cheating. Velma goes to the popular girls to figure out what to do with this situation, and what makes matters worse is that the class is going on a random field trip to Sacramento, which means that this scandal might be subject to bus gossip. The rest of the episode revolves around this field trip, with Velma trying to hide what she knows about Daphne while Daphne tries to talk to her. However, she gets roped into her dad's schemes when he reveals that he's stowing away in the bathroom with the USB file of all the military secrets he stole from Goth Girl's dad. Look, I get keeping a close eye on a guy under house arrest, but why are you bringing classified files into his home, you dumbass? You silly Billy. Also, how was this top secret information not encrypted? Velma has to make sure no one discovers he's here, tanking her public image to do so. This isolates her for the rest of the episode, allowing her to run around with dear old dad. Daphne catches up with Velma, and the two spill their secrets to each other, with Velma roping her into her dad's military crimes. Together, they sneak off to download the files from the USB drive. As they do so, Velma's dad fesses up to his role in Project Scooby. He had been hired by the murder victims to help them out with a coworker who was creating an unsafe work environment. However, Goth Girl's dad told him to drop it, so he bailed. He never got the name of the soldier, but he got the serial number. Using the files from the USB drive, the group learns that he had bought some electronics for his sneakers, and that he doesn't like loud noises. That's not much to go off of, so Velma's dad pivots to his suspicions of Daphne still hiding something from Velma. Again, I really don't care about the relationship drama, so I'm just going to say that Daphne didn't cheat on Velma, she just put a curse on her, which Velma ends up finding romantic, so now they're a couple again. In retrospect, it just feels like a lot of this was pointless. The military finds Velma's dad, starting up a giant bus chase that suddenly ends for the sake of a joke.
But you're over 40! You're gonna need to get out and stretch in the next hour anyway!
Velma, it's over.
There's also a really awkwardly edited joke where the chase goes into a historical part of town and they're suddenly on carriages. I don't know if it's the shots chosen or the fact that there's just no forward momentum for this joke to be played out smoothly, but the way this show executed this classic joke is just not funny. Instead of detaining everyone involved with helping Velma's dad break house arrest and assist in his attempted escape from the authorities, Goth Girl's dad instead just admits everything. Then what was the point of all this secrecy if you're just going to freely admit everything with little to no prompting? We could have avoided this entire episode. Hell, we could have avoided this entire season. Anyway, here's the lore dump. After Not Dead Grandma was institutionalized, the military threw out her project of brain swapping and just pivoted to monitoring meddling kids. Is this seriously the best use of the military's time? Or our tax dollars? Well, seeing how the real government spends our taxes, this isn't that surprising. One day, a Scooby operative discovered Velma's mom with Not Dead Grandma's journals and discreetly took pictures of its pages, disguising themselves as Uncle Scooby. Seriously? They brought this research to the rest of the military, who then used it to create the ultimate super soldier to infiltrate groups of meddling kids. Instead, things went wrong and he made people uncomfortable at work by killing them. Okay, so I have so many questions about this. First, why the hell is the military so concerned about these so-called meddling kids? If it's gotten to the point where chronically horny teens are a threat to the military, I think it's too far gone. Second, how do you, Mr. High-ranking military man, not know the identity of this Uncle Scooby? If they are an operative working for you, are there not employee files you can check? Or just use observation skills to see that this picture is at the diner? Maybe you have an operative stationed there. Maybe the only employee there who had a shoehorned line about being in the military that was never addressed? Third, really? Uncle Scooby? That's a freaking dumb name. I mean, I get what it's trying to imply considering who the real killer ends up being, but no, it's freaking stupid. Fourth, You had the science to make a super soldier, and you used him to join teenage social circles instead of fighting in overseas wars or doing intelligence work. I know this is mainly for humor's sake, but humor has to make sense with people's actions within the show. We'll return to this later. On the bus ride home, Velma has another realization. The killer doesn't like fireworks, really likes shoes, and the attacks were all from a low angle. On top of that, the electronics this super soldier had acquired were the same used in the Babel boxes, which leads Velma to think that the killer might be a talking dog. Oh, please don't be who I think it's gonna be. Please don't do this. Before we can find out, the killer conveniently attacks the bus and kidnaps Velma. You know, you'd think the fact that the super soldier is a talking dog is pertinent information for Goth Girl's dad to share in his little confession, but I guess we need the big reveal. Now, I'd like to talk about a bit of this episode I actually kinda liked. I mean, it's not particularly great or anything, but comparatively, it's pretty good. Fred is excited to go on this field trip to ride some roller coasters. However, every other teenager there is more excited for the random hookups. Fred manages to find a couple not hooking up. Not Shaggy and his brain girlfriend, who physically can't because, you know, she's a brain. He's intent to follow them around while they just want to sneak off and I guess bump heads. When Fred learns that the amusement park ride has been cut from the trip altogether, he stages a protest with Not Shaggy and his brain GF being mysteriously physically pushed into supporting him. During the bus chase, Fred gets to fulfill his desire for some roller coaster thrills with the other two joining in. In their concluding interaction at the end of the episode, it becomes clear that after his innocent trust and love of his mother had been broken, Fred has been desperately scrambling to maintain what little childhood innocence he has left, with Not Shaggy having to learn that you don't have to be in a hurry to do adult things. Sometimes it's good to enjoy innocent fun for just a little bit longer. It's the first time it felt like one of these characters were being looked at earnestly by the show, and I appreciate that. I mean, there's still bad jokes and such, but at least an attempt was made to take Fred, of all people, seriously. Oh, and Amber has been hounding Fred all episode wanting to go ghost hunting with him, but then is content to just terrorize the popular girl. In the post-credit scene, it's revealed that Not Dead Grandma has hired Amber to follow Fred to verify the existence of his mom's ghost, who has been the mysterious force that pushed Not Shaggy into supporting Fred earlier. So, this is a thing now. Of course, Amber will admit this at the next possible moment, which buries any type of dramatic tension that could happen, but I'm getting ahead of myself. With Velma missing, both of her parents have pulled out all the stops to find her, with her dad weaponizing the power of the military and her mom weaponizing the power of having a rich boyfriend. This kicks off a dick measuring contest about megaphone sizes. Excuse me, but your daughter has been kidnapped by a serial killer. Maybe you could put aside your petty BS and find her? I know she's the least likable person on the face of the planet, and the prospect of letting her turn to puppy chow is tempting, but at least pretend like you care. Of all the things that pissed me off this season and that will piss me off in the future, this is what got me heated the most when I initially watched it. Any sense of parental bonding or development of Velma's relationships with her parents, as light as it is thrown away for the sake of a dick-measuring joke. Since the parents are indisposed, the teens naturally head into the woods to track down their serial killer hostage friend. We get a "where are you" reference to keep those keys a-janglin', and suddenly the group gets nearly run over by Not Dead Grandma, who claims that the military is sniffing around the asylum and needs to take refuge in Fred's basement. She wants to continue her research into ghosts, which apparently has been going on this whole time. She suspects that when people die, their consciousness becomes a separate entity roaming around until they complete their business on Earth or something like that. Also, assuming this is true, you'd think that any of the other murder victims would be roaming around as ghosts, able to tell everyone who killed them, making most of this story's mystery completely pointless. This is when Amber spills the beans about being hired at Gay Cop Mom's campaign party to spy on Fred and figure out if his mom is a ghost. And then Velma suddenly stumbles out of the woods. Right, so she was kidnapped by the serial killer who turns out to be Scrappy Doo. Oh, thank goodness it's not Scooby. Keep away from him. Please don't put him in this show. If you, by some miracle, get a third season, do not put this poor doggo in your show. And while I'm glad Scooby's not in the show, this is basically just ripping off the live-action Scooby-Doo movie. Well, except for the fact that Scrappy tries to gaslight Velma into thinking that Goth Girl's dad is the real killer. Scrappy was just an innocent dog that the military experimented on to turn him into a super soldier. So we're just ripping off Scooby-Doo Apocalypse then.
Obviously, this is a lie from the simple fact that Goth Girl's father was in the room when the serial killer talked on the phone and threw a body from outside. And also, Scrappy's just clearly an unstable psychopath. But the episode's gonna gaslight you and Velma hard about him being the prime suspect. Scrappy wants her help to expose Goth Girl's dad and lets her go as a sign of good faith. This is where Velma shows up in the woods pretending to have gotten lost. Velma's dad and the military show up for the rescue, prompting Not Dead Grandma to flee with the kids sans Daphne. Velma is whisked back to the medic tent where her mom announces that after seeing Fred's dad search for Velma so hard, which happened off screen mind you, she has decided to marry him. So that whole thing about her rejecting the proposal a couple of episodes ago was just to enable this episode's plot with any and all character change happening off screen. Okay, yeah, no, that's cool. Important character development happening off screen and only being talked about for the sake of plot relevance? Man, I love that. It always works. Makes me love these characters. Velma seems cool about it, which makes Daphne suspicious about her claim of being lost in the woods, and not the fact that she vanished leaving a streak of blood behind, and then randomly showing up perfectly fine later. Ah, but you see, this was all an elaborate scheme by Velma to trick Scrappy into getting arrested for his crimes. I only spoil that now because that means we can skim over a bunch of events instead of covering each scene seriously and being flabbergasted by how insanely stupid Velma is acting. It's kinda crazy how the show legitimately tries to convince you that Velma is earnestly trusting Scrappy because she knows what it's like to be falsely accused of murder without the awareness to realize that she perpetuated the same sins only 4 episodes ago. But hey, for a show like this, it's completely believable. Anyway, Velma's scheme is to use her mom's engagement to push for her dad to propose to the waitress so he can have a bachelor party where Goth Girl's dad is the only attendee, which is either unbelievable or unbelievably sad. Come to think of it, it's pretty convenient that this is when Velma's mom decided to say yes to the proposal, because if she didn't, Velma's big plan with the bachelor party would have never happened, but I digress. This will get Goth Girl's dad alone so that Scrappy thinks he can enact his revenge against him, but this ends up being a trap where Velma has recruited a group of modestly dressed strippers to detain the dog with his only weakness: vacuum cleaners. A couple of questions. Why didn't you capture Scrappy when he was hanging out in a Humvee surrounded by military personnel, the people who know his only weakness? And how did you get the vacuums into your plans when you literally found out his weakness just like an hour or 2 prior to this? Why not just use his weakness to loud explosive noises that was set up in the previous episode? That could have been a nice payoff opportunity. And since when were you friends with the strippers, Velma? How in the world were you able to arrange this with them? You called them up and was like, hey, a genetically enhanced super soldier dog's coming by the strip club later and I need your help subduing him. You were very lucky they were totally down to do this. Regardless, Velma has now finally captured the villain.
So I ask, who's really the villain here? Them or me?
You are. You bit their dicks off.
However, Scrappy reveals that this actually went all according to his plan. His shenanigans with Velma were all a distraction for his associates to make moves for him so that he can disappear into the night with Uncle Scooby, which is cool and all, but you're still going to prison. This type of gloating usually comes after you've bested your foe. Sounds like you're just yapping, bro. Also, I guess that means that Uncle Scooby is working with Scrappy. Ah, that's why they're called that. Sometimes I want to commit violent actions against this show. You're making me angry, Mindy. Oh, you're making me angry! Meanwhile, Fred's mom finally shows herself after Fred finds out that his dad is engaged.
You were haunting me? As if living white women don't already haunt me enough?
Oh, brother.
How can other people see her now? Did the ghost pill make her visible to everyone? She reveals that ever since she realized that she was a ghost and not a hallucination, which again makes no sense in concept on multiple levels now, she's been trying to discreetly make Fred a man. Fred suggests that maybe a hug will do the trick. Even if she wanted to, she's a ghost, even though she could touch Fred earlier.
I guess that felt important.
Yeah, no, that's some BS right there. Still, Amber offers up her body for possession, which doesn't work because someone's mind can only have one consciousness in it at a time. So obviously this prompts Fred's mom to possess Fred, even though we just established that doesn't work. And Amber was a willing possessee. What makes you think that forcing yourself upon your son will work? That didn't come out right. And neither does Fred. He finally fights back against his mother and claims his manhood for himself. I guess that's good enough for Fred's mom to move on from this mortal coil and on to hell.
Okay, well, I need to unpack.
It's then revealed that Not Dead Grandma is working with Scrappy, planning to use the Brain Girls' bodies as new vessels for the demented dog's brain. Not Shaggy and his brain GF basically find out about this immediately in the next episode. Not Dead Grandma is hiding out in the caves with the bodies, and they just stroll up like they just know where she is. How? I have no idea. The natural place for her to be would be her lab area, which they blatantly didn't even come from. Either she told them about her hiding place in the caves, which would be stupid of her, especially if she's keeping her super secret girl bodies there, or they just know she's gonna be there because the plot says so. And now that I'm looking at these bodies, how are they so well preserved? They've been dead for like weeks, so they should be somewhat decomposed by now. Ain't no way Not Dead Grandma's little cart is doing anything to slow down decomposition. She tries to get them to swear to secrecy, but obviously the horny teenage brain wants her body, so they annoy Not Dead Grandma into allowing Brain Girl to have a test run. However, Not Shaggy can't remember which body the girl he only knows as a brain belongs to, making her storm off. Upon hearing Not Shaggy poorly justify himself to Brain Girl, Not Dead Grandma changes her mind about helping Scrappy, because. She reveals that Uncle Scooby had found her after the Daphne body swap, offering her one of the Brain Girl's bodies so that Scooby and Scrappy can use the other two to flee town. We'll put a pin in that for now. All that's left to be said here is that the Brain Girls get their bodies back, and Not Shaggy's Brain Girl is still mad at him, so that probably means they're breaking up as randomly and suddenly as they got together. Honestly, who cares? Let's move on. Velma's parents decide to hold a shared remarriage, but Fred is not allowed to be his dad's best man because the board of the family watch company thinks he'll embarrass everyone and tank stock prices. Yeah, guys, remember the Jones Watch Company? And how it wasn't mentioned at all this season until just now? I'm pretty sure it's been a solid 10 or 11 episodes since this was even brought up. Anyway, Fred tries to convince them otherwise, but he accidentally whips one of them.
You can do it again.
Oh. Yeah, so Fred becomes a dominatrix for a group of old men. Remember, this is a teenager we're talking about here, which earns him not only a spot as best man, but also CEO, supplanting his father. That's it, that's where Fred's whole learning to become his own man arc ends. He becomes a teenage dominatrix for his company's exec board. I'm going to put a hole through my wall. The main plot follows Velma as she tries to figure out who Uncle Scooby is.
Stop looking for me or your family will die.
I quit. It's too dangerous.
Well, there we go. We can wrap up the show there. No, obviously there's still others interested in finding Uncle Scooby.
Scooby, dude, where are you?
I'll kill you. One of these people is Daphne, who encourages Velma to manifest a way to solve the mystery. Remember? Daphne is totally into manifestation. That's why it hasn't been mentioned in 7 episodes? Velma's parents announce their double wedding, which somehow gives her a way to investigate Uncle Scooby. I seriously have no idea how this is the answer to Velma's problem. Velma's whole plan right here is to switch brains with Daphne so that Scooby won't know about her further investigations. But why would a wedding allow this to take place? This is where your mom's fiance and one of your classmates live. You could come here at any time without arousing much suspicion. If you're that worried about Scooby following you that closely, what makes you think they wouldn't at a wedding? Unless Uncle Scooby just so happened to be someone who is too distracted with getting married to really follow you around. But that's like 1,000,001 chance right there. There's no way that could happen. Anyway, the two swap brains kickstarting a subplot about whether or not hot girls have it easier in life, then through a montage of literally every single grown man in Crystal Cove sexually harassing her, Velma realizes that the life of a conventionally attractive woman is by default really hard. May I direct you to a website called twitch.com, where conventionally attractive women are living their dreams doing things I can't even show here on YouTube. I think you can get by just fine. Once again, I must stress that this is a teenager. No sane adult man outside of your average cupcake lover is going to be not only hitting on a teenager, but outright trying to bang them in public. This show has now cast all men in this town as PDF files, and I don't think it realizes this. Velma and Daphne meet back up at the wedding after literally no progress in the plot. Daphne hasn't been enjoying life in Velma's body either, since everyone seems to not like her. The show tries to say that this is because Velma is conventionally ugly, necessarily, but I'd contend that it's just because Velma is a deeply unlikable person.
Let's go switch back our brains and agree that all women deal with some really annoying shit.
I think we can all agree that everybody deals with some annoying shit in their lives. For example, I'm a man, and I'm dealing with this show right now. But not for much longer, thank you, Lord. The two single brain girls randomly roll up to Velma and Daphne's body to tell her that they're getting their bodies back, leading her to believe that not dead grandma is Uncle Scooby. She goes to confront the old bat, who explains her actual role of putting fugitives' brains into the bodies of teenage girls.
The brains' bodies were already assumed dead. No one would be looking for them.
Yeah, but wouldn't the people in this small town be incredibly suspicious if the bodies of the famous brain girls try to buy a bus ticket out of here? Well, given that this town is full of absolute retards, maybe it's not that bad of a plan. Regardless, Uncle Scooby shows up and brain naps Velma, putting her back in the closet with Daphne. Velma's brain container immediately breaks.
What's going on? Am I in heaven? Am I the only one here? Not surprised, but still.
I have to ask, in what world can this character be considered likable? Since Velma's now disappeared, Waitress calls off the wedding, which prompts Scrappy to break out of prison. How is this dog not in at minimum of maximum security prison or under military lockup? Why is he chilling in a small town holding cell? Especially after he threatened to plan to break out.
But no one in the military is helping you, Dawn. Your superiors are covering up everything about Scrappy and Uncle Scooby.
Okay, I know they have a vested interest in hiding this colossal screw-up, but you'd think that they'd take Scrappy away and put him down instead of letting him sit in a holding cell as the definitive evidence against their propaganda. Also, they probably should have court-martialed Uncle Scooby and arrested them instead of doing the intelligence equivalent of sticking their fingers in their ears and going, la 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 la. Killer dog? What killer dog? Rogue agent? I don't know what you're talking about. As Velma runs out of brain juice, she cries out for help, which snaps Daphne out of unconsciousness to put their brains back in their proper bodies. She says that she actually heard Velma's voice in her head, which saved her. This convinces them that they are in fact soulmates. Upon saying I love you, Velma suddenly realizes who Uncle Scooby is. I guess she's just not used to people saying that to her, which isn't surprising, but dang, that's sad. The two confront Uncle Scooby in the bedroom, and the villain is conveniently knocked out by Amber, who saw the broadcast of the double wedding and just had a gut feeling that something was amiss. So basically, this person just has the ability of getting the script a day early. You are an ex machina BS person. Why are you here? The parents run in, and Velma prepares an unmasking. She realizes that Scooby must care about her since they didn't kill her in the cemetery, and it also didn't make sense for them to disguise their identity unless they were in fact a hot woman, instead of just being a person trying to keep anonymity while working on an illegal military project. You know, the more rational explanation. But with those two key pieces of evidence, Velma deduces that Uncle Scooby is, in fact, the waitress. Oh no, really? Who could have foreseen this?
I was in the army.
Huh?
Waitress explains that she was assigned by the US military to be an observer for Project Scooby. She was assigned to be a waitress because she's a woman. This whole portrayal of the military being a boys' club feels extraordinarily outdated by like 20 years at the minimum, especially when you take a look at who's currently in charge. Okay, maybe Velma has a point. Waitress hated her waitress job until she found Velma's mom one day with the journals, where she realized that she could use the research to create a talking dog to infiltrate groups of meddling kids.
Being hot, they only agreed to hear my pitch over dinner and dancing. So I wore this dog training outfit, and unable to see my face or body, their objectification was nullified, and they took me seriously.
A few things here. Honey, let's be honest, for a cartoon character, you're kinda mid. Quit overselling yourself.
Beauty hints.
Second, does that mean the military top brass knew your identity and just never shared it with anyone? Goth Girl's dad was high up in the military and didn't know. If he did, we could have cut a lot from these final episodes. Why not make her identity common knowledge, or at the very least keep records of who she is? Right, because for the sake of this episode, all men are retarded pigs. Once Scrappy went crazy and started killing people, she was forced to be his friend, so she decided to come up with a way to get him to leave town and not hurt anyone ever again.
Why not just kill Scrappy when you put his brain in a hot girl?
You know what, Velma? That is actually a good point. Why don't you just put Scrappy in a less indestructible body and shoot him? Done and done.
I couldn't risk him sensing my nervousness and killing my family.
Well, that's dumb. You're already nervous about working with the dong-chomping serial killer. I think he'd be used to that by now. I mean, regardless, Not Dead Grandma has already given the Brain Girls their bodies back, so that plan is completely moot. Scrappy either somehow knows about it already, or he's just deranged, as he's now shown up, mindlessly killing everyone at the wedding. Luckily, Goth Girl's dad shows up with the chopper evac, but Velma decides to stay behind to kill Scrappy once and for all.
This is the last Saturday morning you'll ever ruin!
You know, I'm getting tired of this Scrappy slander. You've done more to ruin Scooby-Doo than he ever has. Now, how does she plan on killing the indestructible Superdog? Well, with chocolate, of course. Except that Daphne switched it out for carrots. So yeah, Scrappy murders her before getting wrecked by a missile. Woo! I don't really know what Velma expected to do here. Chocolate's only deadly to dogs when they eat it. Was she gonna try to jam it down his throat? Poison his penises? Plus, if he was specifically designed to be invincible, don't you think his stomach would tolerate a Hershey's bar? The shockwave causes the copter to crash, and before the group can celebrate, Scrappy emerges without a scratch. But don't fear, people.
It's okay, I'm coming!
Velma's back as a ghost, baby, and she possesses Scrappy, which somehow kills him. Would that not then mean that Amber should have died during Fred's mom's attempted possession? Or what about Fred? Actually, Fred fought his mom off. I highly doubt Scrappy would not have been able to do the same thing. Also, how did Velma know how to do this? Or is this just like ghost instinct? Actually, Fred's mom didn't even realize she was a ghost for days, so I don't see how Velma had enough awareness to do this. Honestly, none of this makes any sense. What makes even less sense is that Velma is able to just reject the afterlife even though Fred's mom was immediately jettisoned there after fulfilling her unfinished business. But sure, the cosmic forces of heaven and hell are good to just allow Velma to defy them. The good news for Velma is that Amber's magic book says that she may be able to be brought back to life on Halloween as long as some demon doesn't get pissed off about this situation and drags her to hell. I mean, I don't blame him. I'd probably do the same. Is that supposed to be like a 13 Ghosts reference, or am I reading too much into that? I may be reading too much into that, but I guess we'll never know since this is the final scene of the season and, with luck, the final scene of the show. It just ends with no actual wrap-up, no character growth, no reflection, just a cheap teaser for a season 3. It would be funny if it weren't so sad. I guess it's no surprise to say that Velma's sophomore season is not good. In fact, if there were 2 words for me to describe it as, it would be
shitty crappy!
That's how Scrappy got his name, by the way, because heaven forbid it be a term of endearment, which is kind of what it was initially supposed to be. I can't figure out if the show's just resentful that it has to be a Scooby-Doo show or if it's just intentional rage bait, but either way, it is one of the most infuriating shows I've ever seen. The characters are selfish and childish, the jokes are weirdly specific in ways that make no sense or just blatant surface-level disdain for certain groups of people. There's lazy references to the Scooby-Doo franchise that feel like an obligation at best or just outright loathing for what came before them at worst. The mystery makes no sense, introducing elements that just fundamentally rip open plot holes throughout the story, and other story elements only happen via character stupidity or character clairvoyance. The jokes overall are just awful. At best, it's an amateur comedian's worst set, and at worst, it's just thinly veiled loathing. I could put together a montage, and it would become the world's hardest try to laugh challenge, or try not to kill yourself challenge, or maybe Guantanamo's new method of torture.
No way. Unlike a recorded message from any failed 90s celeb, I can't be bought.
A ghost is just a consciousness. Maybe a brain can't handle 2 of them at once. It overloads the system. Same reason we'll never get a Beyonce-Rihanna collab.
You can see exactly where the hallucination happened in my noodle.
Hey, I can use that word, not you.
They've only been dating for 2 weeks. The only question he needs to be poppin' is, are your tubes tied? Can curly fries be made straight again?
I know it's not your intent, but that sounds homophobic.
Why would eating make her go away? Is she a ghost or a boyfriend? Pink lemonade is my favorite, and it costs 13 cents more than regular lemonade. I'm worse at social media than a fast food company during Pride Month. The only thing I've ever given up on is listening to guys' takes on female directors. But how would he know what went into the brain solution without your journals? He was hot, so there's an upper limit on his intelligence. So the killer hates the 4th of July, likes electronics, and wears comfortable sneakers. Geez, are we looking for a soldier or a grandpa?
Okay, who's laughing? Not me. Me neither. I forgot. Did I? No, and neither did I.
I get it. Comedy is subjective. If I asked you how many dead babies it takes to change a light bulb, they can't, they're dead.
You're either going to be upset because dead babies are offensive and not funny, or you're going to be yucking up a storm like I was when my 9th grade economics teacher told a joke in class. Still, there's a reason projects like Airplane, The Naked Gun, Blazing Saddles, Arrested Development, and The Office are universally beloved. There is still a craft to whatever kind of comedy you're going for. Velma seems to want to go for a farcical observation of society, which can work, but that requires some basis in reality. For example, South Park takes real-world incidents and tries to crank it up to its most absurdly farcical extremes. That's how you get Macho Man Randy Savage entering a strong woman competition because of a lifelong grudge, Cartman doing Bugs Bunny bits with Osama bin Laden, and a serial mascot mafia trying to kill people importing bootleg Ozempic. The comedy comes from the absurdity of the situations, not necessarily the observations made about the real-world issue or the creator's worldview. You can definitely discern what Matt and Trey believe about these issues for sure, but the clear focus is on having fun with the funny. The show aims a buckshot of jokes at everyone in order to have a well-rounded world of comedy. Alternatively, Velma's comedy is basically just making statements on Mindy's worldview.
You know, the thin crust actually has fewer carbs than this gross cauliflower crust.
No! Cauliflower must be healthier!
See, it's funny because cauliflower crust is not healthy because it has more calories than wheat crust. That's it. That's the joke. It only works if you think that calorie count dictates health.
Nor was I able to remove your Cuomo Fauci 2020 tattoo.
Damn it!
See, it's funny because she would have voted for Cuomo and Fauci running for president. That's it. In fact, most of these observational jokes are just Mindy spouting her beliefs, and it's only funny if you agree that all men are incompetent creeps that somehow also completely control society. All rich people are out-of-touch narcissists, and that all women live in constant oppression. It tries to be self-referential and make fun of itself, but even that just feels mean-spirited. I've never seen comedy so blatantly echoing the political opinions of the writers since... well, that came out after Velma. That doesn't count. Another thing you need for a good comedy is a strong cast of characters with well-established personalities and motivations that create good comedic bits. Velma tries to do this, but it doesn't succeed. Our titular character is an unlikable smug broad who seems to not care for anyone. This is fine if you want to keep her as a static supporting character in an episodic show, but this is a lead in a serialized story that tries to have character development for her. Even when she's expressing any empathy, it always sounds incredibly disingenuous because it sounds like Mindy Kaling wants to be anywhere other than the recording booth for her own show. Either that, or she's just the worst voice actor I've ever heard.
I know someone's out there, and if you give me 6 to 10 weeks to investigate, I'll figure out who.
That is also a viable conclusion to come to. The only thing Velma learns this season is that the idea of soulmates and manifesting aren't crazy, and that ghosts are real. Let's not forget she basically emotionally abuses her so-called soulmate and seeks to have absolute control over every aspect of her life, which is never really rectified. And then she gets murdered in what I think is supposed to be a noble self-sacrifice, but it's really just her being retarded and not checking her pockets beforehand. It's really weird that this was Mindy Kaling's choice for a self-insert. I mean, if this is how she wants to portray herself, I guess I won't argue with her. Daphne's whole thing is finding herself, which I guess is fine for a teenage character, but it's really just used for relationship melodrama, which is made more apparent when that whole thing kind of just disappears in favor of more relationship bullcrap that I just don't care about. Daphne should have left that relationship a long time ago. Velma literally views her as a moron and tries to control her, but the show promotes this pairing as a power couple. They're soulmates. Not Shaggy starts off with potential, trying to process the fact that he killed someone while being haunted by visions of his victim, but then that just gets hijacked by Fred. All that stuff about guilt gets forgotten so he can become a neurotic weirdo who really wants to bang a brain.
I want head.
He basically becomes a glorified background character. It feels like his own grandma, who comes in about halfway through the season, plays a more important role than him, and gets significantly more character development. Of course, not Shaggy's loss is Fred's gain, as he becomes the only character to have some sort of a character arc that is somewhat cohesive. After his mother died, he's left to fend for himself for once, forced to step out from under her shadow and become his own man. He actually gets some relatively heartwarming moments with him and his dad and Velma's mom, the latter of whom is actually kind of endearing this season by bullying Velma and legitimately trying to parent Fred. Obviously that then ends on a joke about him becoming a dominatrix, and like the rest of the show, the unfunny jokes obliterate any earnestness that could have been depicted. But hey, at least that's something. That goes a long way for a show like this. As for the new characters, Amber is a weird witch girl who basically gets messages from the writer drip-fed to her so that she could be at the right place at the right time to move the plot forward. Or waste our time with filler episodes. Not Dead Grandma unlocks empathy after being an emotionalist workaholic who neglected her family, so that's nice, I guess. It's more character development than most other people in the show. And then there's Scrappy, our serial killer. Not only has Scrappy being a villain been done many times before to the point of it basically being a meme, but this show decides to turn him into a dick muncher because ha 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 he eat pee-pee. Also, I'm tired of this Scrappy slander. Sure, he could get a little annoying with how often he sabotages his uncle's attempts to escape monsters, but hey, at least somebody was finally standing up to him on a consistent basis.
Go now, or abandon all hope of seeing the sun again.
You stop that!
Plus, he single-handedly saved the Scooby-Doo franchise from permanent cancellation, so to say stuff like,
"This is the last Saturday morning you'll ever ruin,"
goes a step farther from memery to just straight-up slander. When are we going to get Scooby-Dumb snapping and becoming a violent killer? That'd be hilarious. It doesn't help that he's hyped up as an indestructible machine who gets randomly killed via possession. At least he killed Velma, I guess. Actually, let's talk about his whole murder mystery plot for a sec. So he's created as a super soldier and goes murder crazy, killing the sheriff. The military immediately finds out about his fun with phalluses, prompting Waitress to hide him while she tries to figure out a plan to deal with him, making absolutely no progress for over 3 weeks. Again, I don't know how the military doesn't know her identity so they can track her down and interrogate her for Scrappy's location, but it's run by gross sexist men, so I guess it's incompetent. Waitress tries to frame witches for the murder, I would assume to buy her time to come up with an exit strategy, but that doesn't work. Her next step is to catfish Fred for some reason, during which she discovers that Not Dead Grandma is not dead. She formulates a new plan to get Not Dead Grandma to do the whole brain swapping thing and uses her catfish victim as a way to frame all of womankind, getting herself thrown in the mines for some reason. This does nothing to further her operations, nor does it give Not Dead Grandma time to do anything, rendering this whole thing pointless. Once out, she decides to have Scrappy attack Velma to cause a distraction for the military long enough to get Not Dead Grandma and the hot girl bodies into the underground lab. First, I'd think that those mining caves would be either blocked off or heavily monitored after Fred's mom was unmasked. Second, the military has already been distracted with guarding the Dinkley house and has no knowledge about Scrappy's activities until the strip club attack, and that was really only Goth Girl's dad. Third, Not Dead Grandma could have just put on a disguise and snuck out of the asylum at any time. Fred already knows that she was alive by this point, and it's not like the military was actively monitoring the goings-ons around the Jones mansion. Or frankly, she could have just snuck in and started up the lab without notifying anyone. It's not like a secret lab in the basement was noticed by the Joneses before. Plus, she has a brain-swapping machine that provides an easy disguise. Say, like Daphne's body she had access to while all the ladies were in the cave. I mean, Daphne was too busy being a cockroach deity to really care, so, could have done it then. It feels like when all is considered, this was stretched out for no reason. Then of course Not Dead Grandma changes her mind and Scrappy gets pissed and dies, with the waitress facing 0 consequences for her actions. What a great mystery to unravel. A series of spinning wheels until things conveniently fall into Waitress's lap so she can sit on it until the plot says to do something. Similarly to this, the structure of the season is just a grouping of random events that happen for the sake of a plot to happen. There's an event like Creaky Friday, the science fair, a field trip, or a Breakfast Club ripoff. Petty drama happens, and then there's a twist at the end of the episode that almost gets immediately thrown out the door for the sake of the next episode's events. Or there'll be a murder that serves to remind you that there's a mystery going on, since it seems that the characters can't bother with it. That is until the final 2 episodes fast-track everything and the season promptly ends, hopefully to never be renewed. This season could have easily been 5 episodes without losing much of substance, and I honestly think I'm being generous with that. And that's it. That's Velma. It's the worst thing to come from the Scooby-Doo IP, even worse than the Zombie Island sequel. Literally watch any other Scooby-Doo movie or show than this, even that Cartoon Network one with the weird mind control frog monster.
Me and my homies solve mysteries.
How humiliating. Actually, just watch Mystery Incorporated, since Velma is just a worse version of that. You got a more mature show that follows an overarching mystery while still following comedic misadventures. Velma is a snarky know-it-all who tends to be controlling in her romantic relationships. Daphne is a hopeless romantic pining after someone completely clueless to love.
Freddie, did you notice my outfit?
I don't even understand that question.
Fred is a goof with parental issues, and Shaggy, well, he's actually nothing like not Shaggy since he's actually Shaggy. Of course, there's actual character arcs that take the characters seriously in a supporting cast that's actually well developed and likable. Plus, it's funny.
Fred, if you weren't my boss's son, I would not hesitate to make you disappear. Forever.
I believe you.
There are even plenty of Scooby parodies out there that do a much better job at satirizing the franchise with the love and dignity it deserves. Even Hanna-Barbera basically parodied the brand back in the day, which became its own genre. Any of these would be much better than putting yourself through Velma. At the very least, there won't be a worse Scooby-Doo project to come out. They can try, but they won't do it. I feel really bad for the animators who gave it their all to put pretty makeup on a turd pile. This is an impressively well-animated show, especially for being an adult comedy, and it and the animators' efforts were wasted here. I hope they go on to work on well-written projects worthy of their talent after this. And Mindy, the next time you want another shot at remaking the Mindy Project, which I haven't seen but I assume is just another vacuous attempt at making a show all about you, please don't do it with a beloved franchise. Crash and burn your own original stuff next time. So, to wrap up my thoughts on Velma Season 2. Not funny, didn't laugh. That's it, I'm leaving now. Thanks for watching, stay blessed, see you next time.